Lead me to some soul today. Oh, teach me.
All right, welcome
Lord,
everyone
just
to
what to say.
episode number 46 of a series of episodes we've been calling Leading Others to Christ. And those of you that have been listening and watching, you know that during these episodes, we'll be focused on evangelism. And one of our goals, and we have many, but one of them is to stir us up to love and good works, as we read about in Hebrews 10, but especially to stir us up in the area of reaching our family, our friends, and neighbors with the gospel of Christ. My name is Dan Barker, and I preach for the Creekside Church of Christ in Franklin, Indiana. For those of you that don't know, Franklin is about 20 miles south of downtown Indianapolis. And I also serve as one of the shepherds there. Last year, when all this COVID stuff started, talking to Matt and came up with this idea of possibly doing a podcast. And here we are, 46 interviews in, which is crazy to me. But those of you that know me, a little background on this, know that I'm passionate about evangelism. I have been ever since I obeyed the gospel when I was 21 years old in Owensboro, Kentucky. And I've always been striving to learn more. I'm striving to learn how to teach, to use some Bible phrases, to sow the seed, to be a fisher of men, teaching others to teach, and remembering what Paul said to Timothy in 2 Timothy 2:2, and the things you've heard from me among many witnesses, commit these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. And then later in the chapter, and I've always liked this phrase that Paul was talking to Timothy about being useful for the master. So again, we came up with this idea of a podcast where we would interview Christians around the country, around the world, men and women, preachers, elders, deacons, just members in the congregation. And once we've identified them, to interview them, learn more about them, find out how they do their work, what tools do they use, and again, just try to get us motivated, because unfortunately, in too many places, honestly, just to be blunt, in some places the congregations are just dead. There's not growth going on at all, and we're trying to see what we can do to motivate others to get on fire again. So we're excited today to have a special guest with us, someone that I'm confident we'll learn a lot from. So if you're sitting and get out your pad and pen and make some notes, but we have Steve Rudd with us today. Welcome, Steve.
Hi there. How are you doing?
Doing great. Appreciate you taking the time to be on the interview today. Now, Steve works with the preachers for the Hamilton Church of Christ in Hamilton, Ontario, and in Canada. And so, again, you're the first one we've interviewed from Canada. So congratulations. you get the award today. But
what I'm still number 46.
You're still number 46. I'm sorry. That's all right. But hey, that's special. Hey, and it's special because I told you why today's special, right? It's my birthday. So
Happy birthday.
I waited till my birthday to interview Steve Rudd. So
happy birthday. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you. Anyway, Steve, we start out with what we call like the old elevator pitch or the short bio. Give everybody a short bio on where you were born, when you obeyed the gospel, and bring us up to speed on where you're working right now.
I'm a native Canadian, fourth generation. I was born in Toronto, raised in Oakville, Ontario. It was Canada's, for 25 years running, richest city per capita. And I was raised basically, we did say prayers, but I was essentially a self-declared atheist. In grade 3, they had a debate in the class on evolution and creation. I was the only one that promoted evolution, and I killed them logically, but then they voted me out and said I lost. And so I've always been very kind of anti-Christian, seeing it as being like a crutch, etc. And I went to First Year University in the very town where I'm preaching, Hamilton, Ontario, which is Canada's 8th largest city. And it's Ontario is a province like, let's say, California, or, well, very much like California now, but and it's 45 minutes north of Niagara Falls. So I went to university here to get my MBA. I grew up in a wealthy family, and my dad owned 11 companies, employed 400 people, and I was kind of like the designated, heir. And So I was between first and second year university. I went out west, 2,000 miles west, very much like the trek Abraham did. And I was an atheist. And while I was in Calgary, I went into a bookstore, and for some reason I just picked up a Bible and threw it in it was a Good News Bible, by the way, that horrible paraphrase people say that isn't any good. So I threw it in my bag, and I found there were jobs up northwest in the mountains working seismic exploration. And so I paid my last money. I ran out of money. I had $1.25 in my pocket, literally. And I roll into a place called Rocky Mountain House, population 3,000, on a bus. And I said, God, I don't know if you're real, but I need a job. And that was my first prayer. And I don't know why. And I got off the bus, and it was 3:00 on a Saturday afternoon. And I was penniless. And two guys walk up to me and they say, are you the guy that's here for the job? I said, yeah. I thought, how did that happen? They said, well, get your bag. And where's the other guy? Well, there is no other guy. Didn't head office send you? No. And so they hired me on the spot, and I had housing. I jumped on a helicopter every morning. After about 25 days, it finally rained, and I was bored, and I picked up the Bible and began where every novice who had never been to church and had never read the Bible before, had no idea what was in the book. You know, I was generally familiar with the story of the cross and Jesus, etc. But so I started where every novice should start, and that's the book of Revelation. And then I went to Genesis and jumped through, and finally, after about 6 or 8 hours, I finally got to Matthew, and I thought, oh, here's something about Jesus. So I read Matthew, and at the end of the story, I realized that I was a believer, and I walked out into the midnight, and there was aurora borealis and stars and mountains. And for about 3 days, I walked around in a functional stupor saying, I can't believe there's a God, but there is, but you don't believe in God, but you do. And so the result is that it was a very dramatic conversion. And I decided right there and then to quit university and preach. And I also knew by reading the book of Acts that, and this is all by myself, I knew that I had to be baptized to be saved. So I quit the job 3 days later. They drove me into town where I started, Rocky Mountain House, and I saw there was a place called a Christian Reformed Church. And Christian, that's what I'm looking for. I went in and talked to the preacher on a Saturday night again. And I told him the whole story, and he never invited me or anything. So I jumped back on a bus, went to Calgary. Was just buzzing around doing stuff. Had a shopping cart. I had 100 pounds of stuff in my guitar case, trying to make money on the street. Vagrant, sleeping in abandoned bus shelters and stuff, getting arrested by the police, and just generally vagrancy because I had no money. Finally, I realized I needed to get baptized, so I just baptized myself in the Bull River, which is about 200 meters wide and very fast and cold. And finally, I'm playing my guitar on the open mall, and a guy walks up to me and he sits down and he says, do you want to talk about Jesus? And I said, yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So he went in and he bought me some food, and he said, well, I'll come back tonight. We have church tonight. I said, it's Wednesday. What? I don't get it. Church on Wednesday? He said, yeah. So he came, we met, and he took me to church, and that's the first time I ever went to church. And it just happened to be a Church of Christ. And about 3 weeks later, they baptized me a second time just to see if the first one took. So that's kind of my story. And I've preached in ever since. And I've spent 2 years preaching with Mark Copeland in Altamont Springs. He's generally not, kind of tries to hide that fact, even though we're best friends. And then I moved back to Lethbridge for 3 years in Alberta. And I've been here in Hamilton for about 34 years ever since.
Wow. That's there's so many things you brought up there that I don't want to get sidetracked on the interview here because we've got a lot to cover, but you know what? I love to hear stories. And I say this all the time. I don't think we tell enough stories. If you look at the Bible, how did God communicate with us? It's a book full of stories, and all the people and all the characters and all the things that we've learned. We have been fascinated and still fascinated about the the different characters of the Bible. But yeah, just to learn, my story is different from yours, but some similarities. But I just think it's fascinating. The other thing that I think is fascinating too is because you experienced what you did, the background that you had, you come across, I know there's not another Steve Rudd, but you come across somebody else that's had a similar past. You can communicate with them, right? They'll I've been there, done that thing. And you can hear them and listen to them, perhaps when other people wouldn't take the time. And so I'm sure you've experienced that over the years as well, right?
Yes, I've had a wide range of experiences. I'll invite people all the time, and I get no, and sometimes I'll get a yes. But it comes down to just keep plugging away at it and dealing with people where they are.
Exactly. Tell us, if you would, just take a few minutes and tell us about the church there at Hamilton. Tell a little bit about the makeup of the group.
Well, we've got a small group, and it's some of them are members that have been members, much of their life. We've got a number of new converts, a number of people that have been there for a number of years. The church has been here for about 33 years, and it is rough going in Canada. It's very secular, very negative, and in the community. But we have a variety of individuals, and we just we just had a baptism about 3 months ago. A lady that came over from Malaysia, and she was a Muslim, and she had learned the gospel over there, but knew she could not express her faith because she was, she actually said that she would be either murdered or kidnapped or put in a concentration camp or a re-education camp. It was that serious. So she waited till she came to Canada, and she had been using my website from Malaysia a little bit. And when she got here, she walked by the church building and checked with Google and found out that it was the same one as the website, connected. And then she contacted me, and we studied with her and baptized her, and she continues to be faithful to this day. So we're reaching a wide range of people. I would say that generally speaking, in Canada, the only people that are really being converted, generally speaking, are going to be recent immigrants. The natural born Canadians that have been here a generation or two seem to be all absolutely uninterested. There's a mass exodus away from church generally in Canada, and it's going very much towards like what's in Sweden, where like almost nobody goes to church.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And again, so many thoughts there, but I think that's one of the things that motivated us doing this interview is that different stats that we've seen of the church declining in so many places, so many that are closing their doors literally every month. And then in a lot of places, they're literally closing their doors because they're all my age or older, and there's no new people coming in. Maybe they started when there was a lot of business in the community, and now it's all moved away. There's no jobs there, situations like that. But one of the biggest things that I've found and I've seen is that, and I don't know why or how, and not to be negative, but just to be real, is it's like when people are taught what they need to do to become a Christian, somehow this whole thing about we're supposed to take this good news that we learn and share it with others. And it's like that hasn't been ingrained. And I know I'm being judgmental here, but just in a lot of places, they see that as your work. It's not, if I'm a member, that's your work. That's not my work. And so we're trying to get everybody to understand that, no, the Lord's plan was that all of us take this gospel and go into the world, go into our world. If we're in Canada, if we're in Franklin, Indiana, if we're wherever we are, and teach others when we have the opportunity. Steve, I heard about you several years ago, and really it was from people talking about websites and technology and everything. And I think, I don't know this to be sure, but for certain, but I think you're probably one of the forerunners as far as understanding the technology and the use of an effective website. And I actually I had a copy of this, and you'll remember if you can read it when I hold it up. I think you spoke there. There was an article in there that you wrote in the the Truth Magazine, refocusing on evangelism. And I saw one thing in there that you had said, and that was like 5-6 years ago, I think, but that you had it documented that there's over 100 people that have obeyed the gospel as a result of your website. So if you would.
Yeah, it's probably more like 300 now. That was like 15 or so odd years ago. It's like,
okay, so this is older than I thought. So
yeah.
Wow. All right, now, and that just I don't want to say it blows me away. What blows me away is like this podcast. Matt told me, we did the analytics here just a couple of months ago, and in the last 90 days, there's over 5,000 people that are listening to this podcast. And being the old guy that I am, that just blows me away. But there's a lot of interest out here. There's a lot of people that are wanting to know of what they can do to get involved. But let's talk about your website. I know there's a lot, so many. I was looking at it again yesterday. You've got so much information there. But what's the value of that website?
That's a very important question. And the only value of the website is the database that connects the information with individual Christians and local congregations. In an article I authored, I guess the one you're referring to, I make the point that, flashy, using Flash and fancy little graphics and stuff like that, none of that matters, because people, when they find the material, it's always Google is bringing them to the material. So it's a content-driven media, the internet. When churches put up a web page, I have a scoring system. For the most part, about 90% of the church web pages, I would score them about 4 or 5 out of 10 on what they ought to be doing. And, I wrote about that in the article. And that's not to put down what they're doing. It's just that they don't understand how web media works. And so basically, there's 18,000 different HTML pages. That's, each link might have 200 actual print pages. So 18,000 different documents plus, a massive number of graphics. All of that is essentially irrelevant. None of that matters. The content isn't important. The content is like, think of the entire website. Remember in the old days, we would get the newspaper, and in the want ads, we'd put a little, cost us $3.50 for a week. And you'd have 3 lines of text in the want ads. Wanted, somebody to study the Bible, phone, boom. That's what websites are. Websites are like that little ad in the newspaper and nothing. Now imagine if you put an ad in the newspaper, but didn't put your phone number there. Wanted, somebody to study the Bible, but you don't put your phone number. That's what 99% of churches will do. Now, let me qualify that, because what I'm saying is, most churches will put a contact there, but they'll use a CAPTCHA form, which nobody's going to respond to. They use forms, which nobody's going to respond to, or they'll use an email address like info@church.com or something like that. And that email address has been gone it hasn't been updated. It's never checked. And people recognize it as just a generic, it's the one the web programmer assigned you when you set up the website. And so what they need to be doing is putting pictures of individuals in the church beside their own personal phone number, let's say somehow hidden, or maybe it's just somehow to have an email address to directly contact these people. So what happens though is when an individual church puts information on the web, it's 99.999% of the people that are drawing from it are well outside their geographic area and will never attend that church. That is why I recognized early on, 25 years ago, and that's why I developed the database of conservative churches. It's by far the most accurate ever being produced. It's been updated regularly, and it's, what happens is somebody comes, they want to contact somebody, rather than contacting the author or contacting, they're taken to a search engine, which they type in their address, and it puts 10 choices of local individuals, and they can actually choose to communicate directly with somebody in their own hometown, regardless of where they live. So what's happening is I remember years ago, an elder like yourself, Bishop, he phoned me up and he said, "Is this Brother Rudd?" I said, "Yeah, it's Brother Rudd." I said, "Brother Rudd, we just wanted to know, we had somebody walk in tonight for our services, and they wanted to get baptized. And we said, well, how did you hear about us? He said, well, we heard about you through your website. And the elder said, well, Brother Rudd, we don't even have the internet. Who are you and what are you doing? And so what happened was the individual had read the material and had sought a church in their hometown. And that was people just drove right over to the church that night.
Wow.
That's the power of the internet. And so that's why the most important thing, and I did a lecture, I don't know, 15, 16 years ago at Florida College. And that was the very point I made, that, if you have a church website, you need to have a way of making it incredibly easy for people to contact you on each and every page. Otherwise, what's the point? You're just serving material like an encyclopedia. The whole point of the material is to motivate them to either contact you, disagree with you, or agree with you. You're trying to generate contact. So years ago, I in fact, I have an entire website on evangelism that's completely done. I was one of the authors for Bill Tuggle's Spreading the Word. You may remember that magazine. And so I've been, very intensely interested in evangelism in many different ways. And what you find is that by having the internet, it provides a brand new venue that everybody anywhere can contact the people in their own hometown. And that's powerful.
No, it's very powerful. And I think, again, I've mentioned a couple of times my age, but you can look at me and tell, but just the dynamics of technology is it's mind blowing. And the younger people obviously understand it a lot better than the older of us do. But one of the things that I saw, and we've seen this just with the pandemic and everything, of just what it's done with what all that did to congregations, where it forced congregations to get involved in Zoom and streaming their services and all the different things that have come out, me doing a podcast and you've seen this. You got so many preachers out there that are doing weekly studies now, and they've got different ones, and it's just a lot of energy, if you will, that's going on with technology. And I think this is, I don't want to say it's just the start of it, because you were back at the start of it. You and Mark Copeland did, but I think there's going to be a lot of really new, exciting things that are going to come out of this when people go, oh, wow, look what we can do with this, and to me, that's exciting. All right. Well, thanks for sharing that. And tell everybody what's your website, what's how they can go there and check it out.
Bible.ca.
Bible.ca. And really, I commend you for that. Just so much good information on there.
A simple way to get there, I just tell people, is I've had maybe 75 at least first ranking hits of biblical keywords like Exodus route or Bible maps. So, for example, I just recently put out a book on Bible maps, and so if you just type in Bible maps, my work is the first hit in the world in Google, and I'm just saying that's how you can get to the website. Just type in Bible maps, and all the maps are there for free to use and see.
Great. All right. Well, thank you for that. Can you believe it? Matt just held up his, just text me. We've got 5 minutes left.
Yeah, and I understand.
It just goes too fast. All right. I don't know how we can do this real quick. I've got this down. Chickens for Bibles. Tell everybody what that is. What was that?
Well, I was in Zimbabwe a year ago. When I was there using a translator, I preached at about 33 churches. They wore me to death. I was, every single day, different church, and sometimes 3 in one day. And I noticed immediately within the first day or two, I noticed that the congregational makeup was 80% women, and that they were all literate. Zimbabwe is one of the highest literate countries in Africa. So all the women can read and write. So through the translator, I just, I said, who's the preacher here? And so the guy stands up and I said, come up here. And so I put my arm around him. I said, preacher, you got a problem. You got an army of women here, and they don't have a sword. They don't have a Bible. I said, how many of you women here can read Shona, the local language? And the translator, and then all the hands went up. How many of you have a Bible? None of the hands went up. I said, preacher, you got a problem. Why don't these women have Bibles? And I noticed that economically, a lot of Zimbabwe is subsistence. In other words, they don't actually use money. They farm, they trade, they don't use money. Bibles cost cash, which they don't have. So I just said, how many of you women here that can read, that don't have a Bible, how many of you got chickens at home? And all the hands went up. I said, well, there you go. Guess what? It's a win-win situation, because preachers like chicken and you need a Bible, and they got Bibles and you got chickens. So I said, I'm starting the program right here, right now. It's called Chickens for Bibles. You bring 2 chickens and the preacher will give you a Bible. And if you only got 1 chicken, you get an Old Testament. So that's how it started. And they actually had women bring chickens. But then when I realized, I quantified the demographics and realized we needed an impossible amount of money, $20,000 US, to put a Bible into each hand of the women of the 48 congregations that I know about. And so last year, through the efforts of Joyce and Donna Duncan in the US in North Alabama, they started a fundraiser and were able to raise $27,000 US. And they directly wired the money to the Zimbabwe Bible Society. And we bought, I can't remember, 3,000 Bibles in 2 different languages. And the program, there was a daily Bible reading schedule I put together that it was in Shona, and every one of them had to read the Bible daily, and they were going to have accountability Sunday morning, raising your hands. And the women had to go out and invite people and learn Bible verses, and they've had some growth from that. So that's Chickens for Bibles.
Chickens for Bibles. Yeah, when we were talking the other day, when you brought that up, I said, we have to talk about that. And again, just the Joyce and Donna Duncan. Did I get that right?
Yes.
The people that are out there like them, like that couple, that are willing to help, and they just need to be made aware, that there's a need. And what's that old thing? Find a need and fill it. But it's that's so great that they stepped up and helped.
And what's amazing about these 2 ladies is that one is an older lady, maybe about 85, and the other one's a lady about my age. They're both very quiet, introverted, don't say much at all. They're just like flies on the wall. And yet they were able to really bring in influence through an online Facebook fundraiser, and they brought that about. So It shows you that the quiet people can do big stuff for God.
Oh, see, that's we could spend a whole time on that, but and especially in talking about women. I mean, you go in a lot of congregations here in the States, and I'm sure at other places in Canada too. And if you did a head count, the majority of the ones there would be female, and a lot of times they're just overlooked of what they can. We know the Bible's limitations on what they can do publicly, but privately they can do things and set up studies and do things that you and I can never do, just because of the connections that they have. And it's another conversation. All right, I call this the conversion story. I know you have a lot, but tell us about one story that comes to mind of somebody that you studied with that obeyed the gospel that you'd like to share with us.
Well, I mentioned the one from Zimbabwe. From Malaysia, but another one, we have a regular Bible tent. It's a 20 by 20 foot Bible tent. It's got about 200 electronic questions, lights light up, etc. True or false. So we had a young man, about 40 years old. He came and he was a little bit interested, but we talked, and so he ended up. He came to church a couple of times and we talked. And then I saw him about a year later at a local coffee shop. And I said, why don't you come to church? And so he came to church and he was baptized. And he's been with us ever since. And that was about 5 or 6 years ago. And he had been with the Jehovah's Witnesses, with the Mormons, the Moonies, the spacewalkers on Mars, whatever. He'd done it all. And, he came and saw that there was something different about the churches of Christ that he hadn't seen in other churches. And he found himself a home where he was comfortable. Now, this man, he'll take a 7-foot cross made out of 4x4s, a big heavy cross, and he'll go down to the bar district at 2 o'clock in the morning. He'll just stand there and not say anything as a witness. And he does his own little thing. He's kind of like that's not something I'm going to do, but people do their own individual things. And he does that as a witness. And the police have actually told him they like the way he does it. He's not catcalling him. He's not quoting Bible verses at him. He's just standing there silently, holding a cross as people come out of the bar. And he's been attacked by people. Literally, a woman came up and started beating him up because he was standing there with a cross, because the message is clear.
Right.
And so that's Mike. And I'm just saying, you just don't have any idea who and what you're going to find. If the last thing I'll say is, when I first became a Christian, an older preacher, he was, probably in his 70s. And I said to him, what's it all about? What is my purpose as a Christian? I've been a Christian for about 3 to 4 or 5 months. And he said something I've never forgotten. And I'm going to close with this. He said, Steve, your purpose as a Christian is to get yourself to heaven and to take as many with you along the way as you go. And I've never forgotten that.
Yeah, that's powerful. I close it out with one thing. Somebody's listening to this, and we all connect with different ones. And somebody says, you know what, I like what Steve said. He made me think. If there was one thing that you could tell somebody that wanted to get involved in leading others to Christ, and I know there's more than one thing, but what would be one thing that you would tell somebody that they need to do or learn how to do?
They already possess all the skill sets. I will tell them here exactly what I told every church I went to Zimbabwe. They had open windows, and you could see people working a kilometer off in a corn farm. And I would say to the preacher, I said, you see these women, you get them a Bible, and you get them to be able to use their Bible. And and I would say to the ladies, I'd pick one lady, I'd say, you get a Bible. You can go over, you see that lady over there, everybody would look out the window. Tomorrow, when you're out in the field working with that woman, talk to her. Say, do you want to talk about Jesus? And you've got those 5 or 7 Bible verses I told them to memorize. All the women had to memorize. You can do that. Everybody can do that. It comes down to simply inviting, asking, are you interested? Just like me. I'm sitting there playing a guitar, trying to make some money. And a guy walks up from the church, and he just said, do you want to talk about Jesus?
Yes.
Hey guys, if you want to practice, repeat after me. Do you want to learn about Jesus? Okay, your training's done. Go do it.
We've got to go, but this has come up so many times in the interviews, the what if thing. And it's like when you were out there playing a guitar, sitting there, what if, whatever that brother's name was that came up and asked you that, what if he had never done that? What if he had not approached you? Or those women?
Someone else would have.
Somebody else would have. But
someone else would have. God would find a way. You seek and you will find. I call it the triangulation of evangelism. And God is seeking the lost. The Christian is seeking the lost. And the non-Christian is seeking God. God will find a way to keep his promise that if you seek, you will find. If you knock, the door will be opened. God would find a way. In fact, that's exactly how that happened, is that very moment when that young man came and talked to me. And by the way, he was a paranoid schizophrenic in the church. He had all kinds of mental problems. And he was out there doing this, Saturdays all by himself, the only guy in the whole church. Wow. And I'm just saying to you that that was God's way. And, God found a way. God sent him to me as my angel of God to connect with the church. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And again, appreciate you taking the time and keep up your good work. Lord willing, we'll be able to meet someday in person. I hope that happens. And I know I'm looking forward to following up with you even after this. But thanks again for taking the time to be with us today, Steve.
Thank you, Dan. Have a nice day. God bless.
God bless you too. Thank you.
Melt my heart and fill my life. Give me one soul today.